In an unfamiliar place, surrounded by lush forests and high mountains, lives many people dressed as adventurers, and in fact, they are the adventurers in the tower. They go about their business here, and soon they hear a quiet voice calling all the people to pay attention. And when they turn around, they find a talking cat trying to sell them something. The adventurers are surprised to see the stray cat of the merchant, and they were struck by his attractiveness. They ask him what he is selling, and the cat shows them a cherry tomato. The product made no impression on the men. After having high hopes for the cat, they were hoping for something grander, like a legendary weapon or a mysterious potion. An ordinary tomato was something they could eat anytime they wanted. But Cat says that they would be foolish to judge a tomato before they even appreciate it. He claims that the tomatoes he was selling had something special, and they should check his status window to learn about his special characteristics. People were very curious, and they look at the magic tomato's status window. It could increase by 0.1 for 10 minutes and immediately burn 10 grams of fat when eaten. One man says this value is too low, but the tomato has already found its target audience. Women are going crazy for a product that can burn 10 grams of fat just by consuming it. The cat smiles smugly and tells them that this tomato will cost them 500,000 coins apiece. But he is startled when the female adventurers rush at him, ready to buy all the tomatoes he has for an even higher price. Competition heats up between them, and everyone wants to capitalize for themselves. The man asks the cat where he got the tomatoes from, and the cat smiles and tells him it was a secret. We are then shown a scene of a field where these cherry tomatoes are grown. A man picks up a tomato, and it looks like he is packing for today. He tells his assistant Crowley, carrying a cart full of tomatoes, that they have picked enough tomatoes for today. The man tells his other workers to take a break as well, and we see 2 rabbits trying to harvest another crop. And then the man squeezes a tomato into a cup and asks a bee to give him some honey. She spits out a big drop of honey, and the man mixes the contents of the cup. His special energy drink is ready, and he drinks it with his assistant rabbits. Honey and cherry tomato juice is an invigorating drink, and this man says that's what life should be like. All his bunnies also raise their tiny cups to show off. But then a sudden epiphany hits him. He must distribute a drink of honey and cherry tomatoes to the tower manager, and there is no reward for completing the task. But if he refuses to do it, the punishment is disappointment. The farmer doesn't want to do it, but when prompted by another message, he agrees to do the task later. Just then, the cat merchant returns to the farm. He calls the farmer master with a gin and jumps on him. He too is happy to see the cat back and says he did his job faster than he expected. The cat's name is T, and he tells his wife that he sold all his goods and made a lot of tower coins. He's impressed and thinks it won't be long before he's famous in the tower. And when T hears about it, he panics because he's been keeping the name a secret. But this money-hungry cat is already thinking of selling another crop after eating it, as he wants to make a lot of money. When T rushes to the black rabbit asking for a refill, Susan asks him to rest a little longer. The black rabbit shows exceptional skill at fishing and catches a few fish for T. June watches the T and thinks he is addicted to making money, but then he suddenly remembers something he had almost forgotten about. June takes a piece of charcoal and draws a symbol on the rocky wall. The wall is half filled with the same letter, and that letter was the 30th letter. And June says that June is about to harvest his crops, and Black Rabbit and T tuck him on their shoulders and tell him they will help him too. June reminisces about how he has brought 150 days to the tower already since he got lost. He looks at his fields where different kinds of vegetables grow and rabbits and bees by, helping him along the way. And then he's going to do some work too. Then he starts telling the story of how he got out after getting lost in the tower. 10 years ago, on an ordinary day in downtown Panama City, a 90-story black tower suddenly appeared. And it wasn't just in Panama, but all over the world. A total of 100 towers appeared, and every country began to investigate them. But all anyone could figure out was the height of the tower, which was 990 meters, and that it was made of materials strong enough to withstand nuclear bomb blasts. But then one day, people started coming out of the tower, walking right through the wall. A commotion arose and reporters surrounded them. They asked the returnees how they got into the tower in the first place, and the answer they got was, one day a black hole appeared in front of them and they were sucked inside the tower. When they opened their eyes, they found that they were on the first floor of the tower. This news caught everyone's attention as the same incident was happening all over the world. People who had gone missing some time ago were suddenly found coming out of the tower. The following discovery was made by gathering information from various people who had escaped from the tower, and they would soon be made public. All 100 towers are connected to each other, and when a person entered the tower, he would find himself on the first floor. There he was to choose one of the roles of either warrior or mage. One man talks about this at a press conference. He says that the monster starts appearing on the second floor, and each time they cleared the floor, they would get a different reward. And if they were lucky, they would get a ticket like this man had. It was a very valuable item. In addition, the very rare people who were sucked into the tower were called defeated, and they could enter and exit the tower at will. But if any ordinary person wanted to enter the tower, they would need this ticket. But that didn't mean he could also go up and down the floors of the tower. Reporters ask him what makes him think that people would voluntarily go into a tower inhabited by dangerous monsters. And the next question is, what was the purpose of the tower? This man doesn't know the answer to the second question, but he is going to tell everyone why someone would want to climb the tower. At his signal, a woman comes forward with a small treasure box in her hand, and when she opens it, a pile of gold and gems breaks on the floor. The reporters stand up in shock, and the man on the podium tells them that he is sure of one thing: climbing the tower will give them money. All of this was done. The Awakening Association had a monopoly on ticket sales, and they were charging a ridiculously high amount of money for them. The news of the ticket price increase was from 150 million and up to 200 million, and it was live, and a woman is watching it on her smartphone. She's in a mall selling vegetables and starts a conversation with a guy. She complains that people risked their lives to make money in the tower, but it was too expensive for them to charge 200 million for one ticket. She asks the young guy if he agrees with her, and he nervously tells her she's right. It was Si-jun, 26 years old, and he was trying to save up for something special. He calculated his savings and found that after deducting all his expenses, he had about 12 million left in reserve. He wonders how he will be able to realize his dream if ticket prices go up again. He walks home after work and asks himself when he will be able to buy a ticket. But he knows the best thing to do would be to ask if he'll ever be able to buy that ticket. He's tired of chasing the money so hard, but then he comes to his senses out of desperation. He yells at himself not to get discouraged and not to give up. He thinks there will be some way to save even more money. And it is at this moment that he remembers the vegetables he bought at a low price. He could plant them here because he heard that the price of them is going up too. And he had also recently seen an advertisement for an automatic vegetable grower for this machine. It was endorsed by none other than his favorite cheese idol. He begins to think optimistically, even overly optimistic. He thinks that if he saves his money and buys a ticket, he can get a contract with a good guild. Then, if he manages to get out of the tower, he'll propose to his celebrity sweetheart, Sarah. He imagines how good that headline would look and chuckles. He's cheered up, but then notices something strange going on behind his back. He turns back and sees a portal that looks like a black hole and recognizes it as a vanishing point. It was the same phenomenon that consumed the first generation of the defeated, and he was very disturbed. He thinks that the disappearance happened just for him. He stated that he is willing to risk his life to climb the tower and asks the black hole to take him inside. But nothing happens. Instead, the hole begins to shrink and asks why it is getting smaller and smaller, but the hole... He panics and says he won't let an opportunity like this pass him by. If the hole hadn't taken him with it, he would have come to this on his own. As soon as he says these words, June jumps into the hole. Upon reaching the other side, he lands face down. He pulls himself to his feet and wonders if he really managed to get inside the tower. She looks up, talking about all the things he knew were on the first floor. He wished he could see the fancy chandeliers, the marble plaza, and the stores selling wares and gear, but there is none of that here. It is in a deserted hole somewhere in the wilderness. It is an underground dome with a hole in the top through which sunlight streams in. June stands up and looks around, having no idea where he is. He can't believe it and yells in frustration, asking where the hell is he? And we see that he was somewhere far away from the tower, in the middle of the forest, inside the top floor of the tower. Inside the top floor of the Black Tower, the crystal ball glows red and makes a beeping sound. We see the silhouette of a dragon who is shocked and looking at this crystal ball. The orb has detected some kind of change in the tower, and the dragon has to find the reason for it because it was his responsibility as the tower manager. But not the dragon, and Nessie June has no clue about each other yet. He liked to eat an apple in the morning, and the one he just ate was delicious, but that's nowhere near enough. And after that, he eats a sweet potato. The texture of the flavor and moisture of the sweet potato was something that he in no way expected. It was much more flavorful than he expected, even though the potato was raw. But because he was talking while eating, he choked on the sweet potato and had to drink water to swallow it. Then he lies down and thinks it was a good meal. June looks up at the open roof of the cave and wonders how long he will be here. He has to find a way to escape before he runs out of food. He looks at the small amount of food he has and wonders how long it will last. At this rate, he will starve to death if he is not rescued. But June puts that thought out of his mind and, determined that he's not going to die just like that. It was his dream to get into the tower, and now that he was finally here, he wasn't going to die right now. When he saw the apple stump, he had one idea. June takes it and plants it in the soil. He then takes the green bulb and breaks it at the base. He plans to eat the leaves and plant the roots to get more crops. He also takes 3 tomatoes and 2 sweet potatoes and plants them. Whatever is left now will serve as his food until his crops grow. John says he will do his best to survive, that is, until He turns to them and tells them that he will wait for them, and they are his future. But just at that moment, John hears the scream of a monster, which makes his W hair stand on end. He is shocked. After all, what he just heard was the sound of the monster. But after all, there was no record of monsters on the first floor. And then everything around him is plunged into darkness, and June looks up to discover something even more shocking. The moon has eclipsed the sun, and June knows it was the blue moon. He hears the deafening scream of the monster again, and his body can't take the pressure that the scream puts on him. And just as the screaming stops, June notices a black dragon flying in the sky. He was hypnotized by the black dragon and says it's very beautiful. He then loses consciousness and falls into a deep sleep, but something strange happens to his green bow. It starts peeing on the top, and new growth begins. June wakes up the alarm clocks. He still has a headache. He looks at his phone to see how long he slept, and he is very surprised to find that he has been unconscious for 2 whole days. From sleeping on the hard ground for 2 days, his back hurts and he is much more tired than before. But when he sits down and complains that his whole body hurts, his back gets some kind of support. June turns back to look at the plant and wonders where the tree came from. But then he looks at it again and discovers that it was a green onion plant, the very one he had planted. All of them had already grown and become gigantic. June was puzzled. He wonders if a green onion could have grown so big in just 2 days. He realizes that this unnatural growth must be a property of the tower. He has seen a documentary about how plant growth is affected by the environment, and he is certain that the power of the tower affected the green onions. He is struck by the realization that perhaps other crops are now ready, and as he excitedly checks on them, he finds that tomato seedlings have also emerged from the ground, and he is thrilled to see his plants growing. But then he notices that the green onion plants are blocking his sunlight, and he decides to cut them off so that his tomato seedlings can get sunlight too. He breaks the green onions just above the base, and it turns out to be a more difficult task than he thought. He had finished harvesting and was wondering what the green onions would taste like. He lets go of a piece and burns his mouth because this leaf turned out to be sharper than anything he had tasted before. He gets a mouthful of water from the pond, complaining that this leaf is much sharper than it truly is. But even though his mouth was encased in his stomach, he didn't feel any heat. Jun thinks he can get used to it, and whenever he needs something spicy, it will be great. He decides to dry the remaining green onions and save them for later. Jun returns to his usual sitting spot against the rock in the center of the cave, and then starts eating his tomatoes. The sun never set in the tower, but sometimes there were occasions when the moon outshone it, and this phenomenon was called the blue moon. But the blue moon only appeared on the 10th floor. Jijun believed that he was somewhere on the first floor, but now he wasn't sure about it, and that confused him even more. So it was a dragon. It wasn't an illusion, and he doesn't know what floor he was found on. When the tower appeared 10 years ago, one of the major guilds called the Phoenix Guild had cleared the 37th floor. It was an achievement that had not been produced until now, and that was why the information about floors 30 through 37 were kept secret from the world. But there was a lot of information about the floors below. 30 on the floors up to the 10th floor were monster skeletons, and from the 11th to the 20th were goblins, and from the 21st to the 30th were orcs. Zhejiang had heard some rumors about monster shelves on floors above level 31, but there was no certainty about the veracity of this news. And yet he has never heard anything about a dragon. Sejun lies there wondering if he is on a floor so high that no one has gotten to him yet. But then a drop of water drops on his face, and Jun gets up, and it hasn't even rained in the tower. He's heard that the weather is almost always nice, and when he looks up he sees that the sky is clear too. But then he notices something moving very fast, and he gets scared that it was a monster. But the creature he just saw shows itself. It was a cute rabbit drooling on Shijun's crops. Shijun is surprised and wonders if this rabbit was a monster too. The rabbit jumps into the hole and Jin rushes to catch it, but the rabbit uses Eugene's head as a stepping stone and lands safely on the ground. It approaches the green bow, and Jin realizes that this rabbit was something extraordinary. The rabbit points to the green onion, and Shijin asks if he wants to eat it. The rabbit gives his answer, and Shijin realizes that he wants to eat it. Jin sets aside a leaf of green onion and gives it to the rabbit, who happily takes it, and he just eagerly eats it, and Shijin tells him that he could eat some more if he liked it. And then he notices that the plants have already grown back, and at this rate, he will have to pick from them twice a day. But the rabbit starts to say something loud, and Sejun discovers that the rabbit isn't talking to him. He looks up at the entrance to the, and seeing another rabbit approaching them, she lands and hands the first rabbit Solomon's hat and watering can, and they both stand in front of John. John is surprised to see another rabbit, but then it occurs to him that the two are somehow related. Speaker 1. He asks the rabbits if they are married, and they tell him that he is right. John begins to think about keeping a diary of his life in the tower, and the first page of that diary will tell the story of the pair of rabbits who joined him in the cave. The pair of rabbits begin working for Juno, and their job is to help him grow and harvest his crops. They are chatting with each other as they do their work, and John can tell they make a great couple, even if he doesn't understand them. But he wonders how it came to this. Yesterday, after the bunnies introduced everything to John, they told him they wanted to live in a cave, and they looked too cute when they tried to talk him into it, all of them. John felt like he might die of an overdose, so he accepted their request with one condition. He told them they couldn't live here for free. If they would help him farm, he would consider letting them stay. He thinks this will convince the rabbits a little, but instead of refusing, they pounced on him and started cuddling. Yeezy John had to exercise great restraint not to let them out unchecked, because snuggling against their soft fur made him want to adopt them both. So now he sits in his seat and watches the rabbits work. He thinks that the rabbits use their attraction to control him, but he lets it pass by. He asks the rabbits if the tools they used were household items. The rabbit's husband had a watering can that seemed to hold an endless supply of water, but Jean wasn't sure about that. But he thought the rabbit's wife had a magic pocket that held all the tools she needed to farm. He says he saw her and wished he had such a wonderful tool. The rabbits have finished harvesting the green onions, and they can't wait to show them to Sue, John, and C. John tells them to dry the green onions and starts looking at the other plants. But the rabbits look at John with impatient eyes. They ask him some question, and John realizes what they want. He tells them that they have passed his test and can now live in the cave, and the rabbits jump for joy at hearing the good news and start talking about something. They rush to a corner of the cave, and John wonders what they are doing now. The wife gives her husband a shovel, and he starts digging in the ground. And in no time at all, he creates a home for himself and his wife. The wife hangs a floral wreath on the door of their new home and invites her husband in. But he is so tired from digging the ground and building the house that he can barely stand on his feet. So CJ walks up to them and says, "Rabbit husband was just great for building his house so quickly." Rabbit. The husband gives a thumbs up, but immediately feels his wife's hand. At his shoulder, she blushes and sweetly points to the door. and the rabbit husband becomes horrified. He's really scared, but his wife drags him along to sweat a little. Si-jin hears the sounds coming from their house and wishes her husband all the best. But Si-jin is sad inside himself because he envies him for having such a wife. This envy doesn't last long, and the season returns to its proper place. He says that he was bored being alone in the cave, and now thanks to the rabbit he has someone to help him, and something cute to look up to. That's it. John lies down on the dried onion leaves. Smoke starts to rise from under his back and sees something hot on his back. He jumps up and rolls around on the ground, feeling his back burning. When he gets up, he wonders what just happened and sees the cause of it. The plastic water bottles acted as a lens and burned the dried onion leaves. And now John finds inspiration and goes into full wilderness survival mode.